So if I had to pick one of my least favorite words or adjectives, it would have to be the word normative. It's up there in my top 5, just because the way I don't like the connotations of the word. I don't like the obey feel of the word normative, or the structure of what it builds in my mind when I hear that word. Like a name can be normative, like the name Todd or the name Scott, or and nothing against Todds or Scotts. I know some good Todds and Scotts, but the name is normative. It's just normal. Ricky, it's a normative name. And so but I wrote this story in Dead Birds Hot, and I'll pull it up here in a minute and I'll read it, but it's I think I might have I featured this before? I don't remember, but it's called Get Big. Now, let me preface this really fast. So, this story struck me. The idea of it came from a little bit of just a dollop of fact, a dollop of nonfiction that went with the fiction, like a lot of us do, right? But I just gotten off this road trip, I guess, kind of. I literally got nostalgic for my teenage years, and I hitchhiked to Vegas. I came back, and I had ended up meeting this waitress at Denny's, and we had a thing, and went to her place, and then my buddy fell in love with her. Right, and I didn't care. I had more things on my mind, so he moved in on her, and I split. I went to. He didn't move into her house. Well, she moved into his house eventually, but I knew trouble when I saw it, and they were both trouble. And she ended up giving him 4 years of pure hell and deception and lies and infidelity. And I can't say that it didn't make me feel fucking warm warm all over. It did. I literally, when you swoop in on a childhood friend's scene like that, and your impulse is so wild, you just have to have something or someone. And it was really cool for me. It was an out for me, and it was an in for him, in through the gates of hell, literally. And so I ended up going to, I had some friends that rode bikes, and I went to their bicycles, not motorcycles. I went to my friends, I went to my friend's place, and I moved in this fucking house, and it was like, I was like 24, I think, and just this long-haired, wild kid, and now not really didn't know two shits about Jack or Dick. I just knew that I had to get a job. I was broke, and summer was creeping in. Actually, summer was there. Summer was there. I'll tell you, I know that because it was so damn hot, and there was this house had a swamp cooler, and hey, look, for some places like a mile high in the air, if your town is, or a place like somewhere cooler, a swamp cooler is passable. You can do a swamp cooler, but in Phoenix, or this was Short Scottsdale, the house has long since been destroyed and replaced, but it was in off of Osborne and Scottsdale Road. And anyway, so I moved in there, and there were these characters that lived there, and I knew them. I wasn't super close with them, but I was close, close enough to move in, and one guy that lived there in the room I took over, he went to the Midwest to lay like a water line, like a main, like a pipeline or something. Or was it Alaska? No, I think it was Iowa. I think he went to Iowa to lay some kind of water main, some water line, pipeline, whatever. Anyway, he was gone, so I got his room. I got his bed and the cement floor. It was beautiful. It was awesome, but it was fucking hot. One guy was a bartender, one guy was a plumber, and there was this really funny, crazy, beautiful tattooed mama down the street. She was older than me, but she was probably pushing 30. But when you're 24, 30s, even 40 sounds like a fucking, you're about to die any second, right? Like being 54, it's like, holy fuck. Anyway, let me get back to the story. So, not like you were stopping me, but there was across the street, there was a construction site. They were building these big apartment complexes, or this big apartment complex, I should say, but it was fucking massive, like, like a super complex. So I walked over and I found this like little fat furry guy. And it was a fun job. Like I was a tap and die crew. What was tapping the set? What they call it? Where you pulled the chalk line, you snapped it, and you set the wood, the 2x4s and 4x6s out appropriately from the lines you snapped, based on the blueprints. So I got the job. I was working, and it was a fun job. It got to where even one weekend we went up north and we built someone's deck with the crew. And I remember I stepped on a nail and was so fucked. It was like, that feeling, ugh. And so but I did the job, got back, and the next weekend, I went to work and I was working with this little furry guy. I think his name was Jason, or I called him Woody in the story, I think, but a really, really cool guy, really cool fucking guy. And I remember, I walked in and there was he had a story about his brother. He talked about his family a lot to me. First, I have a sign on my forehead that says, "Tell me everything, please," because people tell me fucking everything. And so I ended up doing this job, and he that day I was working, and I was in this frame of this skeleton, and I was doing my job, and I walked over and I sensed something going on. I just sensed something was off. Hold on, coffee. I sensed something was off. And so what I did was I saw Jason, furry, Woody, whatever. He reminded me of a Woody. The name, he looked like he would be like in school or even in the bar. Hey, Woody. I hate that name, but it was like he looked like somebody you would just call Woody. So that's his name in the book, or the story. Well, the book, technically. Anyway, I walked over, and his brother was like, he got sucked into meth, like a lot of desert rats do. They just become dependent upon crystal meth, and I don't know what. I've never tried drugs, but I don't know what that fucking allure is to that drug, but it is powerful. It's a powerful pull, and once it pulls you down, it distorts everything about your fucking life, your soul, your brain, your physical appearance. It's insane, the meth effect I've seen, those casualties, and people I grew up with. Some family members I've seen or at least one, just completely get swallowed by that fucking monster. But so anyway, this guy, there was something about him. This guy that walked up, it was his brother, and he was famous, kind of infamous around the construction industry back then, before the advent of the internet and cell phones and all that bullshit. Things were still. The world were still small, so, if you had a job in this outfit knew about it. You know what I mean? It's like, you hear about you get locked up, you go to prison, and if your name gets bad, it's bad all over the system. It was kind of like that back then with construction. And so, his brother had been, he'd stolen tools from other people, he'd, to sell for meth, as you do when you're a meth head. And so, what happened was Jason, saw him, and he looked over, and his brother was there. He had like two different shoes on. He was clutching his baseball cap. It was such a fucking performance. He had his head down. He's like, "Jason." And I looked over and I was like, "Oh, fuck." And there goes my job. But first, I know I'm selfish. First thing I thought, fuck, there goes my job. And he goes, "I'm sorry as hell, man." Started crying, and a little furry guy walked over and they hugged, and it was just, it was almost like, it was just like a bad movie, right? And so he walked over to me, "Jeff, come here." And I'm like, I walked over and I was like, fuck, here we go. And I had rent made, so I was stoked. I was all set. But, anyway, Jason ended up telling me, hey, my brother came back, and I know he's going to fuck me over, but it's family, and blah, blah, blah. I go, hey, dude, I have a brother who looks just like that. And I shook his hand. I go, thank you for the job, man. You're awesome. I appreciate everything. You gave me a shot. You didn't know me from Adam, and thank you. I didn't want him to feel bad. I was pissed off, but, when you have that much anger to say or to feel towards somebody like that, like a boss who hired you, the first thing you need to bounce back to is gratitude. Because the world is small, and not just that, because you're going to feel better about yourself when you get older. I promise you will. If I'd have been like, man, go fuck yourself, you piece of shit, I'd have felt really bad right now, because here's this guy with his fucked up brother, right? And I have my share of fucked up brothers, and I'm glad I didn't say, hey, fuck you. I said, no, okay. Anyway, he gave me an extra week's pay, which was, again, damn nice of him. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. And I thought, well, okay, that's another reason to be graceful. You might get some more. You might get some grocery money. So what happened was, I ended up fucking walking toward the house, and I ended up seeing this crew, and they were there was this big buff guy, and he was like kind of tiny but buff, kind of like Danzig but taller than that, but just super tan and like Oakley blades and normative. Talk about fucking normative. And so I walked over, and his name was Vince in the story, and I think in reality, whoops, too late now, it's fucking published. And I go, hey Vince, are you hiring? And he goes, aren't you Woody's guy? I go, yeah, but his brother came back, and he goes, Jesus. I'm like, And I didn't want to say anything I still talk to Jason at work. I still fucking fist bumped him or high-fived him or that cool stoner bro handshake. We weren't quite at the locking horns level, but we were buddies for that duration of my time at the job. Anyway, so I got the job, and he was doing paperwork with me at the truck, and he was like, what are you paying you? Jason paying you about about $10 an hour, and I was making like $7.80. Oh yeah, or something. I forget what the pay scale was back in 1994, but I got like a $3 an hour raise working with this guy, and all I had to do was like build a wall or haul lumber. It was actually pretty cool. It was a pretty cool job, despite the African fucking summer. It was a beautiful job. Anyway. Sometimes when I'm back home, I'll take that drive, and I'll look across those apartments. They're beautiful. I mean, I'll think back to like, wow, all this happened in such a short frame of time. And I wrote a story called Get Big because, and this is true, Vince had this like fucking, he never wore sleeves, and his skin was almost purple. It was so tan. I remember he had like this crew of bodybuilders like where I worked with, and I was like I was a sore thumb. I was fucking fly shit in the sugar with that crew. I was that piece of floating feces in a bowl of punch, right? And but they liked me. We all found a common thread, because if we're all there in that fucking job, your family, if you're out there enduring that fucking heat all day, and you're working with each other, and your family, you just are. And even if you're strangers, you're still, for the time being, you're there for each other. It was like that back then. I don't know what the fuck the workforce is like now, and that echelon. So anyway, I walked over and got the job, but I noticed that he wore the same shirt, just different variations of the same shirt, like a different iteration, color, font, but it just said "Get Big," and it was like no sleeves, no collar, and he was like this. But his entire crew were all smaller than him. They were buff, but they were not as buff. So there was a hierarchy. There was a hierarchy there that I, of course, was so fucking outside of that I didn't even count. I was like a junkyard dog to their hierarchy. They just treated me like respectfully, but at the same time like a fucking nothing. I didn't have a six-pack or fucking packs. I just worked. And anyway, so I got the job, and what ensued was this. What's coming up in the story is this like amalgamation of events that happened, and it was, I took the reality of my job and my roomies and the roach coach girl, which I never unfortunately got dirty with. And I never, and the house was, or fortunately, come to think of it, but the house was, there were always parties at the house, and there were these, and that was a new culture to me too, because I was such an introvert. I just wrote, and I worked, and I came home, and I didn't do a whole lot socially. And here were these fucking party animals and these crazy, like, there's almost like the skateboard culture, but they were just, they just lived to have their weekend parties and get laid, and there wasn't anything cheesy about it or normative about it. It was just almost like this sarcastic yet true celebration of youth, and I got to witness it and very often partake in it. It was kind of cool. So this story is called Get Big, and I'm going to pull it up right now. Give me one second. I could have just paused that and pulled it up, and then, 1 second. I keep forgetting I can control time with this software. Let me get some coffee in me. Ooh, that's good. Hang on. Who's messaging me? Hopefully it's good news. No, it's not. It's fucking spam. Anyway, here we go. Get big. I was laid off from across the street when the little fat man's brother walked on the site like the prodigal son. He was homeless and destroyed. I'd heard about him endlessly. They used to be partners. He'd gotten hooked on meth. He'd robbed his brother of tools and sold them. He stole tools from other workers, didn't show up for days on end, and so on. He'd clean up for a while, then get back on it and start stealing again. Meth and the desert went hand in hand. I never understood, but the guy showed up out of nowhere with a long beard and 2 different shoes. That's right, the motherfucker had a big, like Rip Van Winkle beard. Rip Van Meth beard. I forgot about that. Oh, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not doing any edits in this. I'm just going straight through. I'll take some of the coughs and clears out and post, but this is a casual thing. Really, for me, this is just to play with the 87 again. And I'm on an audiobook project where the author wants the 416, and I got it right here. But I wanted to use my MT48 interface with the processing on. And so I really like the sound of this. Well, I like the sound, so I'm going to play with it. And also, taking a break from the audiobook. There's no deadline, thank God. The author's really cool, and it's like, hey, I just want this voice to be dialed. Let's just do brick by brick. And I said, it's the best way to build something solid. So we're going to do that, and I did the intro today, and I shipped it off, so we'll see what shakes when they get it, when she gets it, when the author gets it. So beyond that, I'm just laying low, a couple of days of float time here. It's gray outside, and I just wanted to make a video. And this might be public, it might not be public, we'll see. But anyway, what else is going on? What else is uninteresting to you guys? I'm on almost a full month, getting close to no sugar. I did this back in Phoenix, but I got on the road, and breakfast burritos and sweet mochas got me. And so I'm back on it. I feel really good. Got about 2,000 more pounds to go, and then I'll be good. Once I drop the chin and the gut, I'll be back into the swing of life as far as being physical. Jesus, what a fucking nightmare that 6 months was. 6 months, yeah, was. But if there's one thing I've always liked about myself, is that I have discipline. At one time in Albuquerque, I lost like like 40 pounds in like 3 months just from intermittent fasting and eating no sugar or bread. I just want to eat a lot of fat and a lot of protein and just, wow. I'm kind of on that same trajectory. I want to get back into, I don't give a fuck how I look. I just want to get, I want to get healthy so I can do more shit. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Okay, in case I make it public, there's all my insecurities out in the fucking wind. So there you go. Disclaimer disclaimed. Fuck cares, dude. I'm 54. Who cares? Okay. Anyway. Where was I? No. Oh, yeah. Yeah, two different shoes. His shoes, I think, were not only different. If I remember correctly, they might have been on the wrong feet. I mean, drastically different. Not like an LA Gear and a Reebok. Right, so terrible. But I mean, like fucking red and yellow, right? That kind of a fucking difference. Like that kind of that much of a contrast. So, I guess, fashion was the last thing on his mind. Function before fashion in the most gnarly sense of that phrase. Okay, here we go. Hey, Woody. The little fat man turned. His brother took his cap off and held it at his waist. I'm sorry as hell, man. Word for word. They embraced and cried. I wanted to puke. Woody walked over and let me go. He said he had to do it, that he knew the guy would fuck him over again, but he had to take him back. It was family. We walked to his truck and he wrote me out a check. He threw in an extra week's pay. He shook my hand and I walked off. I folded the check and put it in my pocket, walked across the site and found a crew raising a wall. After they said it, I walked over to the lead. We seen each other around. His name was Vince. Vince was a short bodybuilder. He was really thin on top. Sleeves were out of the question for him. He wore wraparound sunglasses. The sun had baked his skin almost purple. He wore the same shirt every day, a sleeveless black rag with the words "Get Big" on the front. We had nothing in common. I asked him for a job. You hiring, Vince? Aren't you Woody's guy? I was. His brother needed a job. Jesus. He looked at my tool belt. Can you sink a nail and read a tape? Yeah, man. Can you frame? No. I could use a laborer. Woody paying you around 12 an hour? Around there. I'll give you 10. That all right? That's fine. We walked to his truck and I filled out the forms. It was hot, so hot that we stood in waves. Walk with me and we'll talk to Barry. He's my foreman. When I'm not here, it's his crew. Yeah, so. Had I written this back in that time frame, the pay would have been so different. I realized I wrote this reading the 10 or 12 an hour. I realized that. Whoops. It doesn't matter. It's fiction. Okay, here we go. The roach coach pulled in. The roach coach girl was famous on site. She and Vince had a thing going. The workers took off their belts and headed over. I saw Luke walking to the coach. He had walked across the street the day after I did. He was a plumber. He had dusty blonde hair and clear blue eyes, some kind of drunken surfer, and we were far from having the ocean. The desert was vast to the horizon, but it was ugly. I shook my head at him. He gave me the finger. Vince had a loud whistle. He waved Barry over. Barry tossed his smoke and shook his head. He walked over slowly. Vince talked under his breath. Come on, goddammit. Barry stopped and lit another smoke. He walked over. Barry, this is Sean. He's your new laborer. Barry nodded to me. I nodded back. Vince glanced at the roach coach, then over to him. Woody cut him loose today. His brother's back. Barry looked at me. I'll take him. Vince jogged off for the coach. Barry watched him jog. You grabbing lunch, Sean? Hell no, I'm not paying $4 for a fucking sandwich. I am. Fuck it. After lunch, I worked with the crew. I cut wood and climbed stairs, handed up sheets of ply for floors and walls. At 2 o'clock, Barry called break. We sat in the frame on buckets. A lot of the crew lifted with Vince at their gym. I sat away from them in a different frame. Barry sat next to me. You live in that house across the street? Yes, I do. He smiled. He was in his late 40s. He had curly hair and deep crow's feet around his sockets. He wore his cigarettes in his shirt pocket. He was quiet. He knew the trade like the back of his hand. I sensed that Vince hired him for no other reason. They weren't buddies. I looked at his fingers. Not married, Barry? I was. He put out his smoke and walked into the other room and waved the crew on. We worked another hour. Coffee. God damn it. I need to get my... Sorry if I'm stumbling and tongue-tied and saliva-y. I'm kind of just, I'm just doing this for shits and giggles, well, obviously. And I keep bumping that fucking mic cable and this fucking shock mount. This $400 shock mount. Let me tell you something. The one I have right here, to anybody who buys a U87, which I recommend if you can. I mean, it took me forever, but I finally got one. This is a Rycote universal shock mount for the RE20 when a dynamic mic is needed. And that works every bit as good or better than this. And it's like $90 or whatever it costs. A fraction of this, a quarter of this. I just think this looks fucking cool. It's like a chrome star. Bah. Anyway, it does do a job, you know, to a certain extent. Okay. Or a lot of times you'll see someone reading an audiobook or a story, or they'll be narrating and they'll have the mic inverted and, pitched out. And that's a good way too, but I prefer the 87 right where it is. For long form, for video, for whatever I use it for, I like the mic straight up and just right where it is. I don't know why, but I just get a better sound. Even if it's just in my brain, if it's placebo, it still affects my performance. So anyway, and plus it's not like looming down on me, I don't have this silver thing imposing on me. I'm really weird about aesthetics. So, okay, here we go. Where was I? Oh yeah, so got it. Here we go. Carefully put the coffee over here. Okay. The next day at lunch, I walked to the coach with Barry. I hadn't bought anything off the coach before. I had a little extra on me, so I thought I'd buy a cold drink and a piece of fruit. Barry hit me up for a smoke in line. The roach coach girl was Sheila. Sheila was a hot desert rat. She wore half shirts and little shorts. The workers drooled over her, and she loved it. I didn't know how Vince wormed his way in. I didn't really care. Barry and I were last in line. I let him go first. Sheila was a ball of raspy energy. Hey, Barry, baby. Hey, Sheila. She handed him the change. Hey, who's the new guy? This is Sean. Hello, Sheila. She smiled at Barry. Fresh meat. She winked at me. I paid for the drink and the orange. You worked here long? A little while. I work for your boyfriend. I don't have a boyfriend. You mean Vince? I don't really know. Don't listen to me. Why don't you ask me out and see what I say? I put the change in my pocket. Appreciate it. Have a good night, Sheila. Barry smiled at me. He didn't smile much. Over the next couple of weeks... Ugh. Jesus. Over the next couple of weeks, we worked together a lot. And every day at lunch, Sheila asked me questions. She asked me where I lived. I pointed to the house. She laughed. Vince picked up on it. Whenever he saw me at the coach, he was there, like the wind. I never made any hints or compliments to Sheila. Barry was loving it. He hated Vince, and I started to understand it. Vince only worked half the day. When he talked to people, he bounced his chest muscles back and forth. His lantern jaw had the same amount of stubble. His lantern jaw had the same amount of stubble every day. Everything was on purpose with him. Beneath the muscles and wraparounds, he was nothing but a candy ass. He always said we were behind schedule. It was his way of keeping the crew efficient. I thought it was slimy. The guys that lifted with him on the crew were smaller than him, and they worshipped the ground he walked on. Yeah, they did. It was kind of interesting. I mean, part of that coming from my viewpoint, because I wrote this book from the way I saw the world back then. But maybe part of me was a little bit fascinated by somebody who like put so much effort into their body. I mean, I don't mean like I'm doing, because that's just I don't know, trying to stay alive longer. But in his case, it was like just this big fucking like, and there was probably no functional strength. I've been to places where I was with some people like doing like a long workout, and back when I used to do that bullshit, and you get a fireman come in there, or not a fireman, a bodybuilder who was like ripped as buff and, like a cloud, and he couldn't do a pull-up. He couldn't climb a rope. So, like I said, it probably wasn't functional, but he did climb up maybe I'm wrong. I take it back. I just thought it was just such vanity. Not that we all don't have it, but I mean, he was really, it shone from him. Like, it was as much as it went outward, it imploded within him like a fucking neutron star. Anyway, there we go. Okay. Okay. Luke had a thing going with Emma. Luke had a thing going with Emma down the street. Emma lived in a one-bedroom house, literally, and she had pierced nipples. Sometimes she'd walk over and knock on the side door that opened to his room. Her boyfriend had been the singer of a band that had gotten famous. He overdosed twice, but the third time had taken him out. She still carried a torch. Luke didn't really mind. They weren't exclusive. She was too gothic for him. Gothic, but built. She was in her early 30s. She said our house was haunted. I didn't know where she got that. She had her shoulders capped with dragons and flowers. One day on the job, she brought me a gallon of water. She walked through the site during lunch, and the workers cheered her. She gave them the finger. They cheered louder. She handed me the water. Luke told me you switched crews. Just thinking about you, babe. Thanks, Emma. She walked away. I walked to the coach to buy a banana. Sheila smiled. Was that your girlfriend? No, she's Luke's girl. Damn nice of her, though. I turned around and almost bumped into Vince. Excuse me, Vince. That night was Wednesday. It was Wednesday because the trash was empty. I was the only one who took the trash. Sometimes I feel like I have a hair lip, or I'm tongue like, you know what I mean? Nothing against anybody with a hair lip. I shouldn't have to say that, but I'd feel bad. I was the only one who took the trash out. Bruce lived there too. Bruce was fat for a long time. I left town for a few months. When I came back, he was thin. He quit wearing shirts. He was a bartender now. The bar was 4 blocks from the house. He was sitting at the table drinking a beer and reading the paper. Hey, your lady called from Vegas. Wasn't important. Didn't sound like it. That was a whole different part of the... I stood in the kitchen and opened a bottle of aloe vera. Bruce opened another bottle at the table. I don't see how you fuckers stand it over there. I smeared the aloe on my face and shoulders. I tossed Bruce the bottle and pointed to my back. Honey? He spread it around. Fucking faggot. And Greece is considered a right to manhood. Yeah, this ain't Greece. I drank from his beer and dialed in the X. Dialed in the X, Jesus Christ. I drank from his beer and dialed the X in Vegas. Collect. She wasn't home. Bruce tilted his beer at me. Oh, fuck, I almost forgot. She said she was going to Seattle for a week. That's right. He walked into his room. I slammed his beer and took a shower. I ran the shower cold to get some relief from the heat. The house didn't have air conditioning, but it had a swamp cooler. It kept the summer away from us by a few inches. Bruce walked to work. Luke and I sat in the living room. He was talking about Saturday. We had a big backyard. It was deep with high trees. Sometimes we had so many people back there they spilled out in the front yard, but that's when the cops came. The best part about Saturday was the drunken girls. The girls we knew were insanely beautiful. A couple of times we had to break up a brawl here and there, but the weekends were mostly good. I had no delusions of having a steady girlfriend again. There were too many girls at once. Every weekend I had a different one. Sometimes even 2. It was a good time. No drama, no responsibility, except keeping ourselves sober enough after the fire was put out. I know this fruitcake in Portland, and he used to always say, you can't be a stuntman for your own fiction, dude. to people. It's some line he stole from somebody else, I'm sure, and I disagree. You absolutely can be, and I'm living proof because inadvertently my whole life I've been that, but I never had like two beautiful women at once in that house or whatever, anytime. And I didn't, every weekend I had a different one. I wish. Ugh. I felt like I was, in a weird way, like an outsider watching like, these exotic fish that I couldn't afford, just swimming in this big, beautiful bowl of this world that I could kind of like, maybe understand, maybe kind of walk through, swim through, but I had to get out because I wouldn't last. Not because they would get me, but because I would get myself, and I'd get bored, and I would have to go back to what I knew, which was solitude and writing compulsively and reading. But anyway, but the thing with the parties were they were so fun and just lighthearted, and you know what? I'll say this much. I hate to be like an old fogey, but these fucking things, they literally, I don't want to say they ruined everything because, when someone says, well, you had a bunch of money, then you became an asshole. Well, if that were the case, you were always an asshole. These cell phones didn't really do anything they didn't do anything. They just brought out, I think, the worst in a lot of people. It really cut off, like, if you see shows like concerts from back in the 90s, it was just high school or any kind of social anything. People were live, they were talking, they were laughing, they were like, hugging it out and having a blast. And now it's just like, there's a bunch of fucking zombies. And I don't know. It's horrible. Anyway. Where was I? Sorry, I'm digressing a shit ton of fucking times in this read, but I laid on my bed and listened to Sabbath. I smoked a joint and read Volman. I did read Volman, though. The sun had fallen and I was stoned. The words leaped from the page and splashed me. He was talking about hookers and red lights in San Francisco. I liked the room. I had a dim lamp and my bed was huge. I had a couch and coffee table across from the bed. It was good being alone in there. My time in the room after work was sacred. I didn't have a window anymore. 2 weekends back, it was erased by something. Nobody owned up to it. I reached over and flipped the cassette. The music and the pages were beautiful. A fist holding a six-pack reached into my window. I took it. A long bare leg found the mattress. Sheila pulled herself in and sat in the bed. She kissed me. "Hello, Sean." She squinted at me. "Are you stoned?" "Yes, I am." "Nice room. I didn't know which one was yours. I had to spy. Sorry." She opened 2 beers. She was wearing her white shorts. "What are you doing here?" "I thought I'd see what you were like. You read, huh?" "Do you read?" She kicked off her flip-flops. "Not really. I'd rather watch a movie." "Got it." She laid in her stomach. Her ass looked good like that. She flipped the book over and saw the cover. She turned over on her back and slid her shorts off. So, the book I was referring to was The Rainbow Stories by William Volman. Now, one of the best, such a great book about San Francisco, the red light district, in San Francisco, the homelessness, the circle of people, the racists, and there was the skinhead culture in the book, and the killer called the zombie who would like go around and kill people, tapped his cane. It's a beautifully written book. It was so shockingly clear, and just really one of the best books I've ever read. It's called The Rainbow Stories. And I literally, I think I read that, and it's a thick fucking book. And I read it twice in a row. I just got so much out of it. Being in my early 20s and reading about all that damage, But it wasn't done like exploitively. I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't know the biography of this fucking book, but I think he may have lived among them and wrote it. because he went by Mr. Volman a lot in the book, of course, so he was who he was, but it was almost like a paper documentary you could watch. It was just this beautifully written book. I recommend The Rainbow Stories by William Volman. Get that fucking book. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, Sheila just climbed in his window. I mean, and that's one thing. I want to say something else really fast. Back then, one of the best things about growing up in the desert was the women were so aggressive and forward like that. If they saw a guy they thought was hot and they wanted to fuck, they were like heat-seeking fucking missiles. They target achieved, mission accomplished. They were like that. They didn't give a fuck about stigma, reputation. They were alive. And it was like that a lot, and it went both ways. And it was always fun. It was always like, even afterward, you just laughed it off, and you kept going. And that was a culture that I think is one of the only ones I really ever seen that was that prominently set was in the desert. So that's one good part about desert rats. It's not like that anymore. It's just not anymore. So there's that. Okay, probably better these days. Safer these days, too. These days, it's not a lot of fun out there left, unless you're wealthy or you're fit. Okay. At lunch the next day, I sat with Barry in another frame. Oh, stomach growls like crazy today. At lunch the next day, I sat with Barry in another frame. I watched Vince at the coach. I didn't walk over. Sheila smiled at me. Barry lit a smoke. You're being quiet today. What gives? Barry, if I tell you something, you have to swear to God you won't tell another soul. Shut the fuck up. I'm serious. What happened? Last night, Sheila climbed into my room. She didn't leave for a few hours. We stared at the coach. I nodded. You think that's fucked up? He smiled ahead. No, I think that's wonderful. We sat there. He looked at me. Was it fun? It was. Vince walked to his truck and took off. Sheila waved me over. Everybody was going back to work. Barry smiled. You better go over there. Sheila was closing up. You thirsty? She handed me a soda. Thanks. Listen, don't worry about anything, okay? All right. I like you, Sean, but it was only sex. I don't want you thinking I'm some kind of psycho. Good to hear. I just don't want Vince going apeshit on me. Are you worried about that? Not so much in the fighting sense. I just don't want to lose my job. I had fun last night. Same here. You're insane. She laughed. Anytime you want some more, all you have to do is ask. You know where the window is. I'm taking off this weekend. My sister lives in Cottonwood. Tonight I have plans, then I leave. Tonight I have plans, then I leave in the morning. My brother's covering the coach. Barry called me over. I have to go. See you later, Sean. Friday night, Luke and I cleaned the house in the backyard. 1 second. Ooh, there we go. It's funny because I can feel like if I'm getting into a piece of work and I can feel like that, the bass leaving and that raspy like thing going on, and I have to stop and get coffee, or you shouldn't drink coffee when you read it. It shrinks your vocal folds, I guess. And but fuck it. You don't want to stop, but then when you do, when you hear yourself the first like 20 seconds after you drink, you're like, oh fuck, I need to drink more. It's clear now. Everything returns. I mean, you don't sound like a screeching cat. Anyway, where was I? Friday night, Luke and I cleaned the house in the backyard. It was a good deal. Everybody brought booze. Everybody brought booze. Ooh, that S was sharp. All we did was supply the venue. These two crazy brothers we knew had a connection. Fast. That was too fast, motherfucker. These two crazy brothers we knew had a connection, and they brought 2 kegs almost every time. They were twins. Everybody left the bars on Saturday nights and came over. We cleaned the backyard, and I went to sleep. Yeah, I think they were twin brothers, and they were just fucking psychotic. Remember correctly, they both had like really dark mullets, but they weren't like your standard issue mullet. They were like this like Indian headdress mullet. They were just fucking beautiful. Anyway. Bruce scored a big box van. Jesus, dude. Okay. Bruce scored a big box fan from one of his girlfriends. I woke up and walked out into the kitchen. It was actually cooler in the house. He had the fan set up in the window. It blew the hot air away. Morning, Bruce. Good going with the fan. We needed something in here. And it's pretty effective. I had no idea. Shit, we've been suffering like fools. Where's Luke? Went out to get a new shovel. He is busted. I think he's stopping by at Emma's work for a few drinks. We'll see him later on. He'll be there until 3 o'clock, as usual. We made breakfast and drank coffee. I poured some juice and took a vitamin. Bruce was off on Saturdays. We did the same thing every Saturday, pumped ourselves full of nutrients before the night came and destroyed us. At 4 o'clock, somebody was knocking. I walked into the living room and opened the door. He was wearing torn jeans and a white t-shirt. I let him in. Barry, what the hell are you doing here? Slumming. Don't talk against the house. Want a drink? Thought I'd check out one of these parties I always hear about. Hell yes. Stick around. Bruce took off to pick up some... fucking speed bump. Bruce took off to pick up some food. I gave Barry a tour and pointed out the sentimental holes and stains. Luke was out back digging the pit. Luke, this is my evil boss. Barry, this is Luke. Barry shook his hand. Sorry you have to live with this guy. Tell me about it. Luke dug the pit a little wider every weekend. There didn't seem to be a reason for it. I never asked him, just in case he knew something I didn't. Barry nodded to him. See, Sean, if you worked that hard like for me, I'd give your ass a raise. See, Sean, you motherfucker. See, if Sean worked like that for me, I'd give his ass a raise. Luke dug on. Don't count on it. Barry smiled. How wide are you taking it, Luke? I have a plan. We have a fire every weekend. I never really get to hang out back because I'll be in the room with some chick. Not since Emma, I said. He kept digging. Right, but that's part of the plan. And as anybody can plainly see, I'm the best looking one in the house. Sharon gets off work at 11 tonight. Ooh, that's a typo. Because he's talking about Emma, not Sharon. Mm-hmm. Oh, fuck. Which one was her real name? God. That doesn't matter. I have to... I mean, anybody who bought this book is going to go, who the fuck is Sharon? Well, hey, it happens. Fiction, right? But that's just plain confusing. Anyway, let me get back to what Luke was saying. Fuck. Anyway, okay. How did the copy editor... Okay. Right, but that's part of the plan. As anybody can plainly see, I'm the best looking one in the house. Emma gets off work at 11 tonight. She's working a double. I'll have time to stand by the fire. I'll stand there looking into it. All mysterious and half lit by the flames, lone wolf style. By the time Emma gets here, I'll be covered with pheromones, and she'll take me into my room and give me her greatest fuck ever. Let me try that again. That was terrible. Like I felt a frog crawling up into my throat, but I want to get the line out to finish the paragraph. And I'm doing a video, so, typically if I made a mistake, I would get my dog clicker here, I'd click it. If it spiked the waveform, I'd go in post and just move it over. But in a video, it's more complicated because you don't really want to have a lot. I don't want any breaks in this video, like no cuts. So this is so far, so good. Okay. So he's going to be covered in pheromones. This is an actual conversation, by the way. And this guy was out there. Most fucking alcoholic plumber you've ever seen. Okay. By the time Emma gets here, I'll be covered with pheromones, and she'll take me into my room and give me her greatest fuck ever. Barry stared into the pit. Makes sense. See, Sean, you need to apply. Barry stared into the pit. Makes sense. See, Sean, you need to apply that kind of calculation to your own life. Luke nodded. You should listen to this guy. You might learn something. A bunch of bullshit, maybe. He dug and smiled into the pit. At least that's something. Word for word, actual conversation between the three of us. I do remember that kind of, actually that smile into the fire while he was digging and those two crumbing on him. It's a male ritual when you meet somebody new and in the desert rat culture anyway, the two people who don't know each other will crumb on the person who brought the three together. It's just to see how, if you're, one of us, I guess. So I just sat aside and I always let it happen. It still happens down there to this day. So I just let it go. It's interesting. Okay. Not as many people showed up because there was a big blowout happening in the desert north of Phoenix. Some bands were playing and the booze was free. It was an all-nighter, but Luke's plan was working. He stood by the fire and Sharon came over and they went to his room. Barry and I sat out back and drank. I saw Tiffany and one of her friends walk through the backyard. She and I had a thing going before I left town for Vegas. She was a stripper and a wild drunk and Italian. She was a stripper and a wild drunk, tall and Italian. Ooh, she was a stripper and a wild drunk, tall and Italian. Her body didn't know where to stop or what to do with itself. She ran over and jumped into my lap. Sean! Her friend walked over and sat by us. She sat across from Barry. I'd met her twice before. Tiffany put her arms around me. You finally came to your senses and left Vegas for me? You can do that way entirely better. Ooh. You finally came to your senses and left. Okay. Calm blue fucking ocean. You finally came to your senses and left Vegas for me? Barry was frozen. Tiffany liked to wear thigh-high boots. She had big fake breasts and a mole on her cheek. The mole was fake. She kissed me and sat on the log next to Barry. I lit 2 smokes and handed one to her. This is Barry. I've never seen you before. He took pity on me and let me work with his crew across the street. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, Barry. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Barry, this is my friend Laura. She works with me. Laura kissed him on the other cheek. You're a sweetheart. Ooh, you're a sweetheart. I can tell. Hey, thanks. Barry smiled at the ground. He was completely lost there. I laughed. Bruce walked over with Crazy Mary. Now hold on. Before that fucking Pearl Jam song came out and all this Crazy Mary bullshit, there was actually a Crazy Mary. In fact, I should have changed her fucking name. I'm so mad. I hate getting lumped in with any bullshit. You know what I mean? I just don't think. But they actually called her Crazy Mary. But I couldn't think of anything better. Crazy Carrie, Anyway. Okay. She rode her beach cruiser around town. She came by the house a lot and ate our food. So, let me start over. I'm getting thirsty for water, but I don't want to leave the recording, so I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm hearing a lot of sibilants creep out. So any sharp S's, just know I'm aware of them. I'm just not going to fucking deal with them for this recording. Beyond DS, or I run. Okay. Ooh, reset. Barry smiled at the ground. Barry smiled at the ground. He was completely lost there. I laughed. Bruce walked over with Crazy Mary. She rode her beach cruiser around town. She came by the house a lot and ate our food. Sometimes she broke in and drank our beer, but she was fine. Crazy and fine and off limits. Bruce had put the red flag on her from the start. He handed me a beer. It's dying off here. Me and Mary are catching a ride to the desert. You going out there with us? Hey, Tiff, when did you get here? I heard Sean was back in town. I wanted to see him, even though he hasn't called me. I've been working. Barry cracks the whip hard. Laura smiled at Barry. Ooh. I think I'll stay here. You two go ahead. They left. I put the fire out. We sat in my room and drank. Tiffany and Laura were loaded. Barry watched them dance and strip on the coffee table. I laid on my bed and turned up the music. Tiffany laughed and jumped onto the bed with me. Laura sat next to Barry on the couch. She pressed her chest into his arm. You're such a sweetheart. I like you. She buried her tongue in his mouth and squeezed the front of his jeans. She unzipped his fly and started bobbing. He sat there in shock. Tiffany was sitting on top of me drinking her beer. Laura pulled Barry's shirt over his zipper and stood up with his hand in hers. Come on, Barry. I couldn't have fucked up that scene any more than I just did, but I don't want to go back and do it again. She took him into Bruce's room and closed the door. Tiffy. Oh my God. She took him into Bruce's room and closed the door. Tiffy and I. All right, one more time. I'm going to punch myself right in the mouth. She took him into Bruce's room and closed the door. Tiffany and I went at it hard until it was impossible to move anymore. Laura still had Barry across the hall. She was wrecking him. In the afternoon, they were gone. Tiffany took me out for lunch. She dropped me off and I spent Sunday laying around and recovering. Monday morning at work, Barry was being quiet. He sat by himself at lunch in another building. Sheila gave me a burrito. I walked over and sat next to Barry. I pulled a smoke and held the pack to him. He took one. I lit him up. What's your problem? I feel weird about what happened. Why are you feeling weird about it? You got laid by a hot stripper. I'm a 47-year-old man. I just got divorced. I haven't been with a woman besides my wife in 23 years. What were you going to do? Jack off for the rest of your life? You wouldn't understand. You're a young man. Oh, shit. Once you start working and paying bills, it's all the same. You need to relax. So you got a little loose. You needed to, man. You had a no strings attached fuckathon. Rejoice. Be happy. Laura just left my house. That was awful. That was a note I've never hit. Okay. Laura just left my house this morning. She said she wants to see. Laura just left my house this morning. Said she wants to see me tonight. You know how old that girl is? She says she was 27. No, she's 34. All right. It's not my fault. It's all right, here with coffee and, where was I? Okay. Let me just go. And Laura just left my house this morning. She said my God. Laura just left my house this morning. Said she wants to see me tonight. Laura just left my house this morning. Said she wants to see me tonight. You know how old that girl is? She said she was 27. No, she's 34. I couldn't believe it either. She made me swear not to tell anyone. I thought she might have been full of shit about her age, but she looks good. I know, but I haven't been close to a woman in a long time, almost 5 years. See what happens with it. It's just life. God damn, she's alive, though. I almost feel like I'm 30 again. Go with it, Barry, and fuck all these hang-ups. Look around you. Who's really living? Back at the house, I showered and made dinner. I looked across the street to the site. I washed the dishes and laid in my room. I was almost halfway through Volman. I reached over and lit a roach from my ashtray. I played some Descendants and then decided on Tom Petty. I turned the pages and sailed off into the streets of San Francisco. Sheila crawled through my window with a bottle of wine. Nah, that was Get Big. So, sorry for all the stops and pops and weird growls and noises and shit you might hear in this video if you watch the whole thing, which I don't blame you if you don't. But that was just that was a way for me to do a video or to okay. I need to get up and move, but move around. I mean, and move. Come to think of it, maybe back to AZ where I'll meet my own. I'll meet my own Laura. But anyway, I'm just kidding, kind of. And so the point is that I wanted to write a story that reflected my time there, and I didn't plan to really ever use this or submit this for Dead Birds Hot. It just came out, and it fit right in with the feel of the short story and poetry book. Really, only a few poems. There's one long, like 40-page poem in that book, and a 17-pager, I think. But I wrote a story that the Dead Birds Hot, the title story, and it's a story written in broadside, but it's a long poem. Is what it is. I didn't want to do something normative for the title story. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for listening, if you have, and putting up with me and this whole thing today. But I really felt like recording and doing something fun today. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. And again, thank you. And as always, take good care.